Good evening and welcome to Fl33tway's Roundup with your host, of course, me. Now, I'm just going to tell you guys, I got to work real quick on this camera because for some reason it decided it didn't want to work with me here. So give me 1 second and we'll get ready to start the show. All right, we are back. Sorry about that. Do not know why this camera decided they wanted to fight with me on this, but hey, I ain't gonna let that bring me down. We got a good show today. A lot of news has been going on, as I told you guys in the last episode earlier this week. Which, first off, I mean, thank you to everybody that came on for that show. This was a big step for me, so I'm just glad I was able to get any kind of win, and that was a win to get all the views I was able to get, as well as some subscribers. So just once again want to say thank you guys for that, because that's just making me feel really good about this new journey for myself. And well, as you can see, since today is a more football centric episode with the news, I'm wearing my team jersey, my Green Bay Packers. This is a Josh Jacobs jersey. I like him as a running back, and he's been a fun addition. So hopefully too for my team that we can work on getting a good O-line so he can actually get some better yards and some more of a rushing attack, so it ain't got to be all on our star QB. But as I stated in our earlier episode this week, we got the NFL Combine going on. The NFL Combine, just as a small recap, is a moment for the rookies coming out of college to kind of show their stuff off to teams, where they're going to scout them, see if they spot anything that they really like, so then they could pull them in, do interviews, and be like, that's who we're going to go for in the draft. So with the NFL Combine, news is always abound. Lots of news, whether it's the results of the franchise tags or even trades can happen. Anything can happen during the NFL Combine. It's an active NFL event, so expect news to happen. So there's been some news even as early as when I finished my episode, so I had to really jump onto this and bring this news and information to you guys as soon as possible. So let's go and get this started off today. Our first bit of news is one that's not new to a lot of people who've paid attention in the football world, but it is still something that I do want to talk about just for a brief second, and that is, of course, it was announced on the 24th that the Falcons do intend on releasing Kirk Cousins. He's not going to be staying with this team. That was something that was a little up in the air, especially considering the injury that happened to the Falcons quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., and he suffered an ACL injury by the end of the season, and Kirk Cousins did have to step in to be the starting quarterback. So some people were wondering, like, hey, are we going to hold on to him? Are we going to send him on his way? Well, we got our news. They intend on releasing Kirk Cousins by March 11th when the new league year starts, and that now brings into a conversation about what kind of teams could possibly go for a guy like Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's on the older side, but he's a guy who's got veteran experience. I mean, people remember he was a very important person to that Washington Redskins team that we saw, which it was a pretty, I mean, we all remember the you like that moment from him. It was a funny moment, and then he went to the Minnesota Vikings. He was having a pretty solid season there, especially was having a really good season under Kevin O'Connell, and then that's when he suffered an Achilles injury. I got my chat open this time, and I see Go Bears. Man, I ain't going to acknowledge that, okay? But your Bears are pretty solid. I'll give you that. Even though I don't like you guys, y'all were solid last year. So who knows what might happen with Caleb Williams. I mean, I do like watching him. He's a fun quarterback to watch. But when it comes to Kirk Cousins, we got to talk about where he's going to possibly end up now that he's not going to be with the Falcons. And, I mean, when I think of Kirk Cousins, I think one of the biggest places a lot of people think about when it comes to where he could possibly end up is Minnesota again. He has familiarity with Kevin O'Connell as his head coach, so he's going to be familiar with the play calling in that type of style. And, I mean, that would be a really solid fit for him to go to Minnesota and be a QB. We know for a fact he's going to be trying to look for a team that wants a starting quarterback. And, I mean, there are teams out there that want a starting quarterback. The Vikings, we don't know what's going to happen with them and J.J. McCarthy, because he definitely didn't have the best starting season, where it was riddled with him being either injured or he didn't really look like a steady, solid quarterback. So that could definitely be a possibility. The Vikings bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins, you know, a veteran presence that can compete with him. So I don't know. We'll have to definitely see what happens with that. I mean, I'm excited for where he could possibly end up. I mean, the Browns is a team that we don't know what's going to happen with them. They got Shedeur Sanders, they got Dylan Gabriel, and then they got Deshaun Watson. when you think about that QB room, that's not very exciting. And I don't know if they're really going to want to bring in another QB like Kirk Cousins there. So that's a little bit at the bottom of the list. The Cardinals, I mean, that's a possible team considering that they have Jacoby Brissett and Kyler Murray. And I think it's pretty clear they're not going to stick with Kyler Murray as their starter, but you never know. And then Jacoby Brissett, he's not the best quarterback. I mean, he worked really well under that offense, way better than Kyler Murray did by the season, but they got to get someone else in there. And, I mean, Kirk Cousins, he's definitely going to be kind of that placeholder, when you think about these teams, whether it's the Cardinals, the Browns, the Vikings, the only teams that are really going to fit for Kirk Cousins is that he's going to be trying to look for a starting position somewhere, which, first off, that's going to be a little tough for him because since he is on that older side, he really is going to have a team that's desperate enough to either allow him to compete for a starting QB job or a team that is going to just straight up say, you're going to be a starter. Because we already know how it worked with Atlanta. He was not a big fan of being a backup quarterback there. So I don't know where he could possibly end up. But I think if there was a team to be his most likely, the Minnesota Vikings do sound like the most – that sounds like the best team that he could work with there. He could give some competition to J.J. McCarthy. And if it doesn't work out for J.J. where he loses that starting job, which would be crazy to lose your starting job to Kirk Cousins, I mean, he could sit on the backfield, watch – Kirk Cousins play, maybe even get mentored a little bit so he could get his game better, and then maybe by next 2027 season look a lot more like a professional quarterback. So we'll have to just see where that ends up. I'm rooting for Kirk Cousins. I mean, he's a fun quarterback to watch when he's winning, so it will be fun to see where he lands. But what we're going to go and do now is let's get on to our next topic now here. This is a big one. We were talking about this actually in our last episode, funny enough, and that was the rumors that the Cowboys would be considering placing wide receiver George Pickens on the franchise tag. This is for a recap for the non-football fans and for the people that are just tuning in for the first time. Franchise tag is kind of a placeholder extension for a player. This is typically when a team doesn't want to give a massive extension, but they don't want to let the player go to free agency. And George Pickens, everybody knew he was a wide receiver getting ready to head into free agency. And the Cowboys being the Cowboys, they didn't want to let a guy that had as good of a season as he had go into free agency and watch another team pick him up with no compensation. So the Cowboys placed the franchise tag on him, meaning it is a one-year deal. Typically with this either means two things. Either A, they want to hold on to him and find out if he can give another solid season again with them and then make a contract extension, or what I think is more likely to happen, because a lot of times when you franchise tag a player, it doesn't really end the best way. A lot of times players, they want that money, and considering how good George Pickens played for that pretty mediocre Cowboys team, not offensively, defensively, but how well he played with Dak Prescott and the season he put up, there's a very high chance he's not going to be happy being placed on a franchise tag. He's going to want that big money. He's going to want that extension. He's going to want to have some kind of security blanket to know that he's going to be with this team for a while. So in Cowboys fashion, they are once again going to find a way to be on the headlines of everybody talking about them. I mean, I'm talking about them, and we already know Stephen A. and all those ESPN people, they're going to be talking about the Cowboys and how they should have given the extension to George Pickens and that this wasn't the best idea. But we know the Cowboys, where they suck as being a football team, they succeed in being a franchise of making money. And this is a way to make money by getting your name talked about and being on the front papers. So this is a typical Jerry Jones thing. This is a way to definitely get talked about for sure. I don't know how this could result. This could either turn like the CeeDee Lamb or the Dak Prescotts of the Cowboys, where they have a contract dispute and it gets resolved and they get the big extension, or a Micah Parsons situation, which I know a lot of teams and even fans of other teams would like to happen. George Pickens ends up just sitting on the sideline and not wanting to play for the team, and then the team has to make a tough decision to trade him, and then someone's going to have to give up big compensation for George Pickens. If that was to happen, big word on the was, as this is just speculation, there's a lot of teams that could use a guy like George Pickens. I mean, the Bills, everybody knows the Bills needs a number one receiver to throw the ball to because they really don't got that. They don't got that with Khalil Shakir, really. Brandon Cook showed something by the end of the season, especially in the playoffs, but he really isn't a long-term option, and we already saw what happened when the owner talked absolute I still can't even believe that happened, but the owner in a press conference talked absolute trash on his young receiver in Keon Coleman, so I don't even know how long Keon Coleman's going to last with the Bills. He could get released this season or may not even end up playing and going into more healthy scratches, which for my non-football fans, that's when a player is healthy, but they are sidelined. So there's no telling how that could turn out. So George Pickens, I mean, he would be a great guy. I think anybody would love to watch Josh Allen throw the ball over to George Pickens. I mean, that would be a match made in heaven right there. Man, I mean, the Ravens. Zay Flowers is good, but we know he's good. We know he has that talent on the Ravens, but he's not good at being consistent. And the Ravens need a consistent number one receiver, and George Pickens would definitely fit that bill 100%. And that would be kind of ironic considering George Pickens came from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Cowboys. So if the Cowboys found a way to trade him over to the Ravens, then the Steelers got to watch as George Pickens gets to have some fun and some revenge on them. So that would be a pretty fun matchup. Of course, I'm going to mention my Packers because as much as I love the receivers we got, we need to start figuring something out. Who is going to be that number one guy we can throw the ball to? The only problem is why I don't think it's going to work with my Packers is that we already gave up enough compensation for Micah Parsons. And considering the Cowboys and how good Pickens was last season, I could definitely see the Cowboys wanting some pretty high draft picks for him. And I don't think we need to be giving any more draft picks away. We need to be going into the draft focusing on filling those holes that we have on our team on that defensive line as well as the cornerback room. So, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. I mean, hey, if any fans for other teams are out there, you guys name a team that you think would be a good fit for George Pickens. But now we're going to go and move on to our next set of news here, and that is over the week, there was a trade that happened. The Jets and the Titans gave us our first NFL trade of the new season, and that was New York sending defensive end Jermaine Johnson to the Tennessee Titans for their defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat. This is a pretty solid trade right here in the sense of how this could work out for both teams. Jermaine Johnson, he's been part of this Jets team for quite a while, and he was part of the Jets team when Robert Saleh was their head coach still. And Robert Saleh was part of the Jets team that drafted him when they picked him out. And now, funny enough, the Tennessee Titans have Robert Saleh as their head coach. So this makes a lot of sense why Robert Saleh might have talked to the Titans about this and said, we need to go and get Jermaine Johnson. I know how this kid works. I know what he could do for our defense, and I know how I could work with him so then we could get our defense to some tie-in levels. Because, listen, one thing I think a lot of us football fans have to consider is even though the Jets are the Jets and they weren't good and they probably will never be good, but, hey, anything can happen. One thing you can't deny is that the time while Robert Saleh was there with the Jets, they had one of the highest rated defenses. And I think that's something a lot of Titans fans should be happy about, to get a guy like Robert Saleh, a defensive-minded head coach, to be there and coach that defense. Because he even said that his time while he was with New York, he wasn't actually doing the defensive play calls, which shocks me how good that defense was, because I thought he was doing the defensive play calling, but he wasn't. He was just there and monitoring the defense. So that's really impressive to think about that, especially now that he's going to be calling defensive plays for the Titans, and now he's going to be getting a guy like Jermaine Johnson to join him over there. So that will be fun to see. And who knows, we might see Jermaine Johnson get back to form, especially under Robert Saleh. And then I can see how this works for the Jets getting a guy like T'Vondre Sweat. T'Vondre Sweat, I think he still has some gas in the tank. I think this is the guy that could still get to the quarterback, get some pressure, and considering with the head coach for the Jets being defensively minded like Aaron Glenn, this could be a really good and solid trade for them to have a guy like T'Vondre Sweat who you know is going to put in that effort and can work well on a defense. So that bolsters that defensive line. I don't think he's like a full-blown solid replacement for a guy like Quinnen Williams, someone that the Jets did trade to the Cowboys last season, but I think he'll be serviceable enough. So I could see how this trade works better, though I think I would probably say this trade works a lot more in favor. This works in a lot more favor with the with the Titans, actually, considering the connection with Jermaine Johnson and Robert Saleh. So I think that could be pretty fun and exciting with that pairing. What we're going to do next is we're going to go on to our next topic. Since we are talking about the Jets, we got to talk about something that did happen at the NFL Combine, and that was that was while the NFL Combine was of course being live and everything. The cameraman decided to pan over to a sleeping Aaron Glenn while the Combine was going on, and this has been kind of creating a little bit of a divide between fans, where some fans are saying apparently they want Aaron Glenn gone because of him being caught sleeping, while others are saying, well, hey, give the guy a break. Like, he's waking up early. He's waking up early to be there for the team and work things out and be prepared for watching these guys. And sometimes people are going to get a little sleepy. For me personally, I mean, that's such an interesting conversation. And we actually, funny enough, have the video here too, which I'm actually going to let you guys watch it first, and then we'll talk a little further about my opinions on where I stand with this.
Glenn looks on for the Jets. Fernando Mendoza 1. Jeremiah Love, who we'll also see on Saturday here on NFL Network, the running back from Notre Dame 2. And then number 3 is David Bailey of Texas Tech.
Man, oh man, oh man. Well, that was something there. That was something there. So as you saw, you could have your opinion. Some people might not think he was asleep. Some people might think he was. Others are saying that he was looking at a tablet. It looked like the guy was a little tired. He looked like he was tired, and he honestly looked like he was a little bored too. And I was watching Pat McAfee's show too, and he was saying that this combine hasn't been the most exhilarating of combines, which isn't an excuse, because if you are a head coach with your team going to a combine, your goal is to scout these young players out and see if they're going to be able to work under your defense, your offense, whichever position you are looking for. So to be caught sleeping, it almost looks like you aren't passionate about this job or passionate about the team to try to help them out here, especially considering today is all about the tight ends and the defensive linemen. And considering that the Jets defense didn't get a single mind you, the Jets didn't get a single interception all season, which is unheard of. So you kind of want to work on building this defense so it could be at its best. So yeah, I mean, for me personally, it looked like the guy was asleep, but I can understand if you're tired and that maybe you just had a slip up. It did also look like too, similar to what this post said. It looked like someone did tell him, like, hey, you're on TV and you look asleep. You need to wake up so then this doesn't look bad on us. So it did look like that. But I mean, I also think that I think that was a little irresponsible too for NFL Network, because why is the cameraman going over there is heavily focusing on a sleeping Aaron Glenn? That just gives a bad look to that team and stuff. But I mean, I think anything could give the Jets a bad look. So yeah, I mean, share your opinion on that, on if you think if you think that was right for them to be showing Aaron Glenn sleeping, or if you think Aaron Glenn should have been awake, paying attention to these young players that are out there trying to show what they got. Now let's go and move on to our next topic here. This is another quarterback who we could possibly be seeing leaving his team, as earlier this week it was announced that the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson, their first-round draft pick from 2 years ago, have reached an agreement for him to seek a trade. This is pretty big. This is pretty big here, as we know that there are a lot of teams right now who need quarterbacks, and the Colts, it looks like that they are going to fully commit to Daniel Jones as their QB, even though it is going to be – so it looks like they'll be committing to Daniel Jones to be their starter, but until he's back from his injury, probably have Riley Leonard be the starting quarterback for the team. And this is going to be big for Anthony Richardson here, because I know we are all in this age of the redemption quarterback, the Sam Darnold, a quarterback that not many people thought highly of or didn't really show stuff with their previous teams, and then going to another team and looking good. And Anthony Richardson, I mean, I like him. I do like him. I know that he's had not the best of moments to showcase what he's got, considering we had the whole him timing, literally having to take himself out of a game because he was quote unquote tired. That wasn't a good look. And then we know that he was out of the season because he suffered a orbital injury, and where he was stretching with one of those stretch bands and it snapped into his eye, and that took him out of the season. So he couldn't even really play for the team for a backup role or anything like that. So he hasn't really been able to show off the talent, but I can't deny, though, when Anthony Richardson is on that field and when he's able to play and show that he can play, he looks like a solid quarterback. To me, he's like a black Josh Allen. He's like a black Josh Allen. This is a guy that can throw the ball and is a guy that can also scramble. He's also a dude that when he scrambles, he can take hits. He has shown that he is able to lower his shoulder and take some pretty big hits and still keep running. And I'm excited to see what team is going to give him that opportunity. I mean, the Vikings, as we just talked about, they're a team that's going to need a backup quarterback to J.J. McCarthy, or more so a quarterback to compete with J.J. McCarthy for that starting job. And so you bring in another young guy, Kevin O'Connell. He was a part of that whole Sam Darnold revisionist era. So he might be like, hey, let's go and do this again. Let's try to work it out with a guy like Anthony Richardson, and especially because people do go back to last year. There was a moment well, not last year. There was a clip that was going around where Kevin O'Connell, the head coach for the Minnesota Vikings, had a deep conversation with Anthony Richardson, giving him praise, talking about that he really believes in him and believes that he could go far in this league. And so he might see this and be like, hey, let's go for a guy like Anthony Richardson and see what he brings to the table to compete with J.J. McCarthy. So that could be a really solid fit. I mean, he's got the weapons to throw to. It's just going to be a matter of, can he show up? So that would be an interesting team, and I could definitely see that. Another team, I mean, any team would want to go for a guy like this. He's young. He's still got a lot of years in him, and I think he's shown moments and flashes of talent where you're going to want to maybe test the water. So the Cardinals, that could be another team that might be interested, especially with a new head coach like Mike LaFleur. He might want to take a chance on Anthony Richardson and see, hey, maybe we could work something out with him to be our guy. So that would be a fun pick. I mean, the Jets, I think they got a lot more other issues they need to be worried about than going for a guy like Anthony Richardson. So I would say no to that one. But I'm going to throw in an interesting team into this mix that I think should maybe consider the idea of Anthony Richardson. And maybe this is me just talking from a sense of how exciting this would look if they were paired up together. But wouldn't it be a little fun to see Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams trade for Anthony Richardson? Listen, Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback, but he is getting older. We know he's coming back this season to play for the Rams, and I'm excited to see what they got in store for him and what he could bring to the table. But the Rams do have to start thinking about the future for a quarterback. And what better way than to trade for a young quarterback like Anthony Richardson, have him sit on the sideline, have him learn from Matthew Stafford, the recent NFL MVP, have him sit behind him, watch, learn, get better. And just imagine what Anthony Richardson could do under a guy like Sean McVay. And when I think about that, that's kind of exciting. I think that would be a great destination for a guy like Anthony Richardson to end up with. He goes to L.A., he learns under Sean McVay, he learns under Matthew Stafford, and could then be the new guy, the new face of the Rams going into the 2027 season. And I just think that would be a great pick. I also think that the Rams also would have the draft capital to go for a guy like Richardson. And two, this saves the Rams from having to go into the draft looking for quarterbacks and stuff on who's going to be the guy to develop under the Sean McVay system and Matthew Stafford, when all you got to do is probably considering that this is a guy, he was a first-round pick, I think we have to consider that you're not going to have to give up too much to get Anthony Richardson, because I sadly think the culture at this point where they're willing to probably take any kind of draft capital so they could send him away to another team and focus. And I think they probably want to focus on Riley Leonard and Daniel Jones as their going forward quarterbacks. So you guys can share in the comments or chat who you think would be a good team or a good team fit for Anthony Richardson. I shared mine. I think the Rams would be a fun destination for Richardson to end up and be that future quarterback for the Rams. So that will be fun to see how that plays out. Now, as we are finishing with that, we're going to be reaching actually one of our last topics for today's episode, and that is the search is done. You heard that right. The search is officially done. My Green Bay Packers have selected their new special teams coordinator in Cam Akers. This is a guy who does have some special teams. He does have special teams experience. For my non-football fans, special teams is the unit that is all the kickers, the punters, the punt returners, the long snappers. These are the guys that handle making sure that things go right when punts are made and we're returning kicks, returning punts, or trying to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And my team was definitely on the bad side of special teams. And as a Packers fan, I know that my team has been mediocre when it comes to special teams. Special teams has cost us a lot of games. Last season was a high for us. I mean, we all know what happened in the playoffs where we lost to the Bears in that game, which that wasn't as much of a special teams problem. That was more of a Brandon McManus problem, where he missed an extra point. He missed 2 field goals. He missed 7 whole points for our team, and we saw those 7 points really could have been used for the Packers in that playoff game against the Bears. But of course, there was way more issues than special teams. But special teams was a big problem in our final matchup with the Bears in Week 17. Where there was an onside kick by the Bears, and we did not recover the kick, and the Bears were able to turn around and win that game in the last few minutes. It was time for us to get rid of Rich Bisaccia. I think if you are a football fan and paid attention to Packers fans, you had heard us complain, whine, cry about wanting Rich Bisaccia out of our building, because he had been our special team coordinator for a couple years. We had gotten him from the Raiders. He wasn't really good with the Raiders either. We picked him up. He was there with our team. We picked him to help make our special teams better, and it honestly stayed the same and did not get better, and even at times got worse. I mean, I remember watching the playoffs when we beat the Cowboys in the wild card. We beat the Cowboys in the wild card round and went to the divisional round against the 49ers. And man, I mean, from the missed kicks, everything. Our special teams was just so bad. So anybody should be able to do a better job than Rich Bisaccia. And hopefully, too, we get rid of Brandon McManus and bring in another kicker. One thing going with Cam Akers is like I said earlier, he has experience. He was the special teams coordinator as well as the special teams assistant for the New England Patriots from 2020 to 2023. His first season there in 2020 as the special teams coordinator, the Patriots were ranked 11-1 in special teams. So that was a pretty good, even though there was a little bit of a decline with him where they did start to fall to the 18th ranked, 25th ranked. So there is a little bit of that, like, I'm a little skeptical. He hasn't looked the best, but he does have some upside from the times where he was looking like a good special teams coordinator. He was the coordinator that helped bring out 2 Pro Bowl punt returners for the Patriots. So he might be able to bring us a solid punt or kick returner that can maybe get us a returning touchdown or maybe not fumble the ball. So I'm hoping that Cam Akers can bring that stability that we need to this Packers special teams, and hopefully this is a good hire for Matt LaFleur, because this was a hire that that Matt LaFleur needs to land, because if he ends up getting another special teams coordinator that does not deliver for the Packers and ends up just making the team look less than or worse, then I think Matt LaFleur could definitely be on that hot seat. And we can't keep losing games by special teams. We can't have blocked kicks get turned into touchdowns. We can't have blocked kicks give the opposing team a chance to score on us. We can't have a kicker miss 2 field goals and an extra point that ends up sending us home early in the playoffs. I mean, the Packers should have been able to win that wild card game against the Bears, but sadly our defense was trash and our kicker was trash. So, yeah, I'm hoping Cam Akers can do what he needs to do to make this team look better, and hopefully we also get a better kicker than Brandon McManus, so then we can start heading in a better direction of stability and finally reach a Super Bowl. But that is all the news that we got for tonight. Like I said, this was going to be a little bit more of a shorter episode than my first episode earlier this week, as this is more football-centered. And I just want to once again thank everybody for coming on tonight, for sitting through this and listening to the news that I was able to bring to you. Of course, as more news comes, I will be bringing more of those news. Once again, Fl33tway's Roundup, we're going to be on every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Central Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you all have a good night, and I'll see you guys later.